All right, welcome everybody to the Road to Better Plant Design, episode 3. My name is Caitlin Dunn, and I'm pleased to be your moderator today. This webinar is being recorded for your convenience. You'll be receiving an email with the recording link for future reference. So make sure you connect with us on social media as well as on our website, asti.com. Remember to register for our upcoming events at asti.com/calendar. We do have a lot of upcoming webinars that I'm sure you'll be very interested in. I'm pleased to introduce our presenter, David Wolf. He's a director of services at Applied Software with years of experience in the industry. Also joining us today is Owen Whitehouse. I didn't know he would be joining us today. He's also an expert with years of experience in the industry. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys. Take it away.
All right, thank you. Just as a note to Owen, I'm going to switch a couple of the slides around just to give our other personnel time to join.
No problem.
And let's jump into this. And I had this clicked, so let's switch that. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yep, you're all good.
Great. So this is Applied Software. We are on the 3rd episode of Road to Better Plant Design. I hope that you have found this journey valuable. And first we started off with talking about what does this even look like? In episode 1, we looked at how do you define business outcomes? How do you define metrics? And what are some ways that you can measure your progress toward those metrics and progress towards those business outcomes? And that's a really key part. So if you haven't caught that, go back and take a look at that, and hopefully it'll provide some valuable insight. Then in episode 2, we dived a little bit into strategy and what it looks like to evaluate different tools. So this doesn't apply necessarily to just Plant 3D, but also to other products that you might use in your design environment. But then also deciding what is the best way to implement products. So whether you just need someone to come in and you're okay with a longer schedule, doing it more on an ad hoc basis, or if you need a plan and you need to keep people productive, and so you need to kind of focus your configuration at the start, talking about a range of those choices that you can make so that it meets your need for your project and your business. And in episode 3 now, we're going to jump into some different companies that have been working with Plant 3D for a little while, some of them longer than others, but kind of talk about what they experienced and how their vision for better plant design became reality. And so we're going to kind of walk through those examples here. This is going to be a very fluid, open type of discussion. So we do have about 5 company references we're going to review. If you have any questions at all around the conversation today, around what these companies experienced, and then feel free to ask. We are going to try to keep this on topic so that we can stay focused on the vision and execution portion, but we definitely welcome conversation around that. So let's go ahead and jump in to the first client. So this is Merrick. Merrick is exciting because we went through some business analysis process earlier this year, a couple months ago, and I had no idea how many different things that they do. So they have a division that does nuclear work as well as process and power type of work, and so they really cover the gamut of activities for engineering and design work. And as such, they have a big focus on being ahead of the innovation curve. And what we mean by that is some companies are focused on getting their projects out, and they kind of adopt innovation as becomes more broadly adopted within the industry. And then other companies want to push the boundaries, and they can tolerate a little more risk because they're evaluating new technologies, but because they can jump in at the start of a technology, then they experience the benefits from that longer. but obviously it does increase the risk a little bit because no one else is doing it, or very few people are doing it. And so what they had experienced was, and I'll kind of review, that was the business outcome that they had desired, is they want to be ahead of the innovation curve. The challenge was that they do industrial, and a large portion of their work is industrial. And with that comes, it's sort of a niche compared to commercial activities like hospitals or schools or resident or buildings. And so the reseller that they had at the time didn't have in-depth experience in the type of piping that they were doing for industrial facilities. And so they wanted to move, and along with what you have probably seen, as Autodesk is transitioning people and has been transitioning from like selling the boxes of software to more of a user-centric model with subscription, and with making sure that the customer is having a good experience. That kind of invites the reseller to change how they interact with clients as well. And so what we've been trying to focus on, and what Merrick wanted very much, was a business partner for technology. So that means that someone who is experienced at doing research in new technologies, and a company that come in alongside of them and cover a little bit of the risk, but also have a plan for adopting it to a specific industry. And so along with that was just the general skill level of plant users. And so that really became the start of the conversation. So we started with the known technologies, and we took, Merrick had took the Plant 3D user and administrator training. Owen, I feel like you might have taught the administrator training, but I can't remember. It was very early, I think, when you started with us, if you did teach it.
I don't think so with Merrick, but I did several in that area of Denver.
Yeah, there were a bunch. So we took their Plant 3D users and got them through some training and got them through administrator training, so they could just take care of the daily business around modeling, updating specs, and those types of things. And then as part of that, they also adopted advanced steel. They also had some more Revit training that they wanted to go through. And so over the course of the last year and a half, I believe it's been a year and a half, they are engaging with 3 different technology teams at Applied Software. So we have our architecture engineering firm, architecture engineering focused team, our plant team, and our manufacturing team. And all three of our teams are working closely with different people within the Merrick organization to drive improvements and innovation. One of the big highlights has been the work our team on the AE side has done for computational design. So we have some great expertise in Dynamo with Revit, and we're looking to bring that into Plant 3D and seeing how we can maybe potentially generate some designs and equipment layouts with Plant 3D. And some of those really kind of like not far future, because it's getting closer every time, but definitely more complex and new in this space. And so that's a very exciting thing to work with a company. We enjoy definitely working with Merrick and the expertise that their users bring to the conversations. And
so David, I think the takeaway here is as we go through these clients, you're going to see kind of a progression of even Applied Software's level of maturity around working with these Plant 3D users, and doing better and better jobs of capturing their business requirements and showing true value. So that I think that that's really fun. But I guess the other takeaway from Merrick is what they were mainly after, as I understand it, is just a better partner. They needed engagement with teams who could take their questions and hit the ground running. And so that's as I understand it, they're one of their primary business objectives, and that was achieved.
yes, exactly. And yeah, the ability to work and not have a partner that's focused on one technology or one product definitely addresses their needs in a big way. Thank you, Owen. Yeah, the maturity and the business outcome conversation is something that we've been driving at for a while, and then we're starting to kind of get our heads around it first, and then also working to implement tools to manage our own metrics around how we're helping people as well. So this is a fun one. We started with, it was last year, I think early last year. And so this is a company that focuses on modular design. And they had run into some just really interesting and frankly weird issues. And we do encounter this periodically because in this day and age, everyone wants to work from everywhere, and that becomes and creates its own types of challenges. And so some of these were around, they would walk into the office one day and their piping just didn't have the information to it assigned anymore. I believe they were trying to also share projects with India, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they were doing some replication of databases, and they had some interesting workflows.
Yeah. And so I guess as far as business outcomes went, they really were stressing about the data that they were losing and the amount of rework they were having to do just because the parts were corrupt essentially. Mm-hmm. And then as a result of that, the cost was hitting their fabrication group because the delays were meaning guys are just standing around waiting for work. The project's getting further and further behind. And so when we connected with them, there was an extreme sense of urgency around smoothing out the data issues.
Yeah, I think a high level takeaway from this company was this was right at the beginning of the pandemic. Everyone was very confused about how to organize work and still, keep, remote team members busy and productive, and still get, quality piping models completed and get their ISOs dropped. And they were having a terrible time of it. So, on the journey to better plant design, you can't always point the finger at your software. Sometimes you have to step back and look at your network and your infrastructure. Maybe it's user training, and in this case, it was kind of a combination. And it took a lot of digging to actually get to the root cause, which was, the way their IT team was doing some synchronization of their backups was actually corrupting their databases. And they didn't have a disaster recovery plan. So, after coaching them through that process, they got those systems in place, got everything working again, and then everything was fine.
So, Owen, can you kind of dive into what does a good disaster recovery plan look like? What are the key elements of that?
Well, I think there's actually just one key element, and I'll say two. The first key element is have one. You need to have a plan. And then the second part of it is you have to test the plan. No plan is complete until you are 100% confident that you can execute it. That's why the military teams go out and practice they practice all the time about, how to execute an infiltration or whatever they do. They run the scenario over and over again, and you have to do the same thing for your IT systems. If you're going to recover from, anything, say, with cybercrime being such a huge threat these days, so you've got a ransomware issue, or maybe it's just a network server went down, whatever it is, if you can't get back up from it, you could be in a world of hurt. So yeah, make the plan, test the plan.
Yeah, and that really, a lot of times we feel comfortable, on the technical side, we can walk through the steps ourselves, but a lot of times we might not even be the one who would be executing it in an emergency situation, right? So documenting it means that, any power user would be able to say, all right, here is, maybe the management is on vacation, or the key guy who normally does this is on vacation. And wouldn't you know it, Murphy shows up, and now someone who's not usually doing this process has to do it. And so how long is it going to take him? And so your downtime and your risk level is how long it takes him to walk through that and then get back to a recovered situation. And so, we have some of our clients, even recently, they estimated a week to recover. Whereas you should be, if everything's set up and working right, a matter of hours instead of a week. Is that fair to say?
That is 100% fair to say. In this day and age, it's almost unforgivable to lose more than a few hours of production with an IT system being down.
Yeah, very nice. So definitely, we do try to highlight that every time we walk in a door is, do you have a backup? Have you restored from the backup?
Are you sure?
Yes, exactly. So this is another fun one. ChemStress is, I had so much fun training these guys and helping them out. And as you'll see, as we go through this conversation, we've had different levels of engagement with clients. So some clients who are very focused on design and production don't have the manpower to do some of the configuration they know is needed. And so we assist them very heavily. And other clients, we do a little bit of training for them and maybe some support cases, and then basically they're off to the races, and we hear from them only when there's an emergency. And so this is one of those. ChemStress is very, light on our, we don't interact too often. We kind of just see each other at AU and check in maybe quarterly and just say hi and see if there's anything we can help them with. But for the most part, they're very good at using Plant 3D and improving how they use Plant 3D. So they, again, are more focused on the process side, doing the design work from the process side and the engineering. And so they have a strong project management team as well that helps execute on those types of projects. And when we encountered them, and this is one of our, I guess they've been a client with us for about 3 years now, maybe 4. They had been doing a lot of 2D work heavily. And so they were kind of in the middle of transitioning away from doing designs in 2D. And they were looking at lowering their project costs, obviously, and shortening schedules, just because that had become kind of a fairly common way to work in the industry with doing 3D. And so those are like the 2 big things that people are able to knock out, is just shortening the project schedule and lowering costs by being able to move a little bit quicker. And then also they were looking at this using the idea of data throughout their groups so that you have less issues raised up from people not having the right information at the right time. And so those are really the business outcomes that they were looking for. And the challenges were they were running into roadblocks. And when they ran into those issues as they were moving through this process, they didn't have any partner to work with that really understood what they were trying to do. And then as part of that, they had picked as a platform Plant 3D to transition out of 2-dimensional design, but they needed to make sure it's smooth so that they could keep getting work out. And so whenever you have roadblocks that just are unsolvable or you're just stuck, it really it kind of creates its own business outcome because of the level of risk that creates. So we did like at ChemStress, we did one of the first, it wasn't even called Plant Roadmap Workshop at the time, but we did one of the first plant evaluations where we identified their business goals and what they were wanting to accomplish, and then ran them through the training they needed for Plant 3D. And so that helped them get up to speed with the project template and understanding how important it is to have a project template. And then over kind of one of the next stages that they took, the next step they took was working with a line list. So in Plant 3D, getting a line list out of the P-IDs can be a little complex. And so we had developed a custom report that does the hard stuff for you and gives you a lot of control over using the data and giving designers control over, when you want to manually override a description for off-page connectors or something like that. And so they adopted that. They've integrated that into their current work processes, and they're very happy in working with that in moving the data and allowing the process engineers to provide feedback directly into the project without having to have multiple layers of communication. And so kind of also to highlight, they've been a client for, I think, about 3 years now, and we've only had about 10 support calls. And then we did, in the process of migrating and discussing migration to 2022, we did find a bug just in how the ISO config XML works. So we ran that through the Autodesk support channel for them, and it's been a very enjoyable partnership. We did have one interesting kind of a data corruption issue, and this is the sort of thing that a partner can solve. Is they called us, one of their support calls was around the pipelines being invalid, and so they had done a little bit of discovery and a bill of material was wrong. And for whatever reason, and this is one of those things we can't really identify until it happens. And we don't really ever know what caused it. We just know that it happened, but it's very, very rare. But a pipe length was like 20 feet, but it was reporting that it was 3 inches or something like that. And so we were able to do sort of some emergency coding and get them a plugin that basically set a status on all of the pipes that did not have the correct length in the model. And then they were able to use a color scheme inside of Plant 3D to highlight the invalid ones so they could quickly go through. And there was a report so they could identify all the drawings that had invalid items. And so that made it, instead of an unknown risk that the client would be getting hit with during fabrication, it was something that they were able to quantify and get straightened out within a couple of days instead of wondering when it's going to hit next. So obviously those are really critical issues, especially around the pipe lengths, because it can really mess up your ordering as well as your fabrication process.
So I like to jump back with clients like this, David. And as you know, P&ID is pretty near and dear to my heart.
Yep.
So I think that second bullet point you have there actually says a mouthful, because there's a lot of there was a lot of change, organizational change that Chemstress had to go through to get to that point, which, you know, the first part of that is adoption of intelligent P and IDs. Now, P3D makes that pretty easy, but that's a big change from a company going from 2D AutoCAD drawings to data-enabled P and IDs. And too often we see people use the tools but not use the tools. And so in this instance, we saw a company that used the tool and then turned on all the, you know, the lights behind the scenes with your customized line list report. And now they're doing, you know, early bill of material and all kinds of things out of those P and IDs that has really enabled them to lower their project costs and shorten their schedules.
Yeah, and so I got to speak with Dan Skeggs a couple of weeks ago in preparation for this, and it was funny because they did go through a lot of that organizational change, and they've been, you know, it's been fantastic for them. But it was, you know, one of the things that I didn't expect out of that conversation was, even though they've managed to change different groups and move and focus more on the data part, there's still, like, even some of the project management has to change the conversation, even to where they're, even on small projects, shifting so that the 3D is the default deliverable, because the project managers, they've seen it, the value for the large projects, and then there's still, though, some hangover in headspace thinking that, well, it's just a small project, so we can just do 2D for that. But they've quickly even adjusted on the small projects now to where they're saying, no, you know, even if it's a small, quick project, it's so much faster when stuff happens to be able to identify it in 3D and fix it in 3D. So it doesn't really matter the project size anymore. They're standardizing across the board on the 3D project design.
That's awesome.
Let's see. Wow, these always go faster than I feel like they're going to. All right, this is another fun one. So I mentioned previously that some of our clients have a need to keep their designers focused on production. Obviously, work ebbs and flows, and so different times require different things. But this is a gas and electric utility in the South here, and so we have a very close partnership with them. So it's a very large design group. The 100 people represents both civil, structural, electrical, and mechanical. So not all of these are in Plant 3D all at one time. There's a wide variety of different products. And one of the big things that they were doing is they were coming from a major piping platform product. And the licensing cost for that is extremely high. And then, as like with Autodesk, a lot of these other vendors are switching from perpetual to subscription licenses. And when you do that on a large platform product, it definitely causes the company to reevaluate the cost and the bang for the buck. And so they had selected Autodesk as their platform, but when we first encountered them, they weren't quite sure what all products would be used in their design environment. And they didn't really have time to stop work to figure it all out. And so that's where we were able to kind of identify some key parts of this. And this is really one of the fun things, because a lot of times as from the design background, we tend to overthink things, and we're like, well, here's a nice plan for how we can go through this, and you can have a couple gates to make sure we don't make decisions wrong. And they basically said, nope, we're just going to go, and we'll follow the plan definitely, but we do need to get this done. We're committed to it. And so we started work, and Owen, you got to do the product selection workshop it wasn't even I don't think it was for plant, was it?
It was for everything. So holistically, we looked at their entire plant design workflow, and from soup to nuts. There was everything included in there. They had cable and conductor management. They had an instrumentation database. They had a lot of visualization tools. They even had some web-based platforms. Their IT team is extremely advanced.
Yes.
So they're doing a lot of really interesting things with data, but the licensing cost for the tools that they were using was out of control. So they wanted to see if we could get the same level of functionality for them with a much lower, cost, annual cost. Not so much the cost of entry, but more just on an annual basis, not such a massive licensing outlay. So yeah, I built a matrix of all the different tool sets and as many functions and features as they found relevant, and then we scored those on a number of different platforms. And they really weren't so interested in helping us or having us help them make a selection. Their road to better plant design was, we're already settled on P3D, but we need to know for sure that P3D can handle all this functionality, and where it can't, what should we do in addition to P3D to support our business goals? So it was a very enlightening workshop where we just sat down and took all this input from all the different teams and really came up with a plan that we're still in the process of working them through today, and it's going very well.
Yeah, and so I do want to reference, we did talk about that sort of feature analysis that you did and weighting in the previous episode. So episode 2 has a little bit about what the workshop would look like to analyze what products would work for different workflows.
That's right.
So that is there. And so one of the things that they evaluated too was the custom support detail library. And so, we were able to do things like, oh, my mind is going blank.
Well, I remember we did a lot with adjustable geometry on some of their supports. So we definitely took the Python scripts that they were used to using and enhanced them dramatically.
Yeah, so they were able to stretch, anywhere that they had pipe rack in there that needed to grow. If they had any, all the T-poles that they wanted to place, all those were configurable and stretchable. We also identified whether they would be fabricated or purchased. So like whether it's a shoe versus a T-pole, then you have, different work processes around those. And so they can generate a report at any time they want and get that information out, as well as which details to use. And so that took a lot of load off of them, because that was roughly 300 hours of work. And it's not simple, easy work. It takes a mix of a designer. It takes a mix of a piping designer who understands the business need. It also takes a experienced Python developer to get it done in a reasonable amount of time. And then it takes just some detail work to check it and make sure it's all functioning correctly from a user point of view.
Mm-hmm. The other fun thing about this organization was, because they were coming off of an enterprise grade plant design solution, very expensive, lots of IT staff and overhead to maintain. Because they were so advanced in the utilization of an enterprise grade tool, we had a lot of questions and requirements during our workshop around integrations. And so we got a lot of time into making sure Plant 3D was able and, usable in terms of handing data off to other applications in their organization and consuming data from other applications in their organization. So that was a fairly high requirement across the board from all their disciplines. So that was fun and very interesting.
They've been so much fun to work with. I've been so impressed nearly every conversation by the quality of the people that they've hired. They're some of the best users I've ever worked with, as far as how sharp they are and in the creative ways they solve problems.
Mhm.
Very good. And we have one last client we'd like to highlight. And this is a customer that's located in Tennessee. They do, similar to Merrick, they do a wide variety of engineering services, including nuclear. And so the nuclear requirement really has driven a lot of the organization on their IT part around the controls that they have for documents. But they very consistently, they had adopted Plant 3D before I joined Applied Software. And so, but they've been consistently improving every year the ways that they interact and work with the product. And so they use as kind of their backbone for document control Autodesk Vault. So their Vault implementation is very focused on making sure that the production doesn't stop, that they have the controls that they need around the files and file access. And also the IT group is one of the best I've ever seen about making sure the design team is served and has access to the best tools possible. They're very passionate about making sure that the design group has just an excellent environment to work in. And they really go above and beyond to basically treat the design group like a client that they serve and take care of and want to see successful. And so we've had a lot of conversations, from Vault migrations to, Windows security for the cloud, backup and warehousing. And so the challenges, like I mentioned, are how do you make sure you implement all of the controls needed for nuclear design, and make sure that every person who accesses different files has the right level of information. And then also, similar to most of our clients, they're multidisciplinary firms. So they have different products that they're using across the board in different groups. So it is a big challenge to keep all of that together and moving along. And so that when there is an improvement in one place that will affect teams, it gets rolled out, or if it's just an improvement for one team, that it doesn't get held back by the rest of the company. And so we do what their Road to Better Plant Design looks like is we do some review of their workflows. Every year they pick one or two different things they'd like to dive into. We estimate those things and scope it out, and then we kind of do a sprint process with them where we're checking in to see if it meets their needs, tweaking whatever documentation or videos that they need to demonstrate the issues. So we do specialized focus training on specific topics. For example, the archival of Plant 3D projects in Vault, and make sure that you get something that you could restore to a real project in the future if you need to bring it back, and capturing all those steps and documenting it for them, as well as some R&D efforts. So just knowing, they want to know, are there other tools available that will solve problems better than they're being solved now? And so we consistently meet and identify if we run across a new tool, we let them know about it. And likewise, they're doing this on their own as well. So they've let us know when there's different products that they're looking at, and we keep informed of their approaches and what's worked for them. So they have because Vault is a backbone for this company, that they have their own internal team, and they've been able to manage and do some really complex Vault migrations to keep their team up to the latest versions without losing data and without incurring a large cost and downtime, like by keeping people out for multiple days. So they've just been a joy to work with every year, or every time we work with them. And so we have a pretty close relationship, and we enjoy seeing them successful. Let's see, do we have any questions at this time? It's 11:34. This is about the time frame we wanted to wrap up, but wanted to take a break and have some time for Q&A. If you have any questions, or let's see if you identify with any of these customers that we talked about, do any of them match the kind of space that you're in? Just love to hear from you guys who have attended live.
No questions yet, but we can give everybody a minute.
I can hear all their keyboards clacking, just typing.
Right. Yeah, I don't think we have any questions coming in quite yet. So if you guys want to keep on going, if you have any more material to go over, I'll keep an eye and see if any questions come in.
Well, this was the final slide.
All right.
So if there are no questions, we will go ahead and wrap it up. The plan will be, we will take these webinars, we're going to build a page capturing the road to plant design, the better plant design. So stay tuned to our website. I'll be sharing links on my LinkedIn profile. So if you'd like to contact us on LinkedIn and connect, we'd love that. But we want to get this information in a readable format that people can kind of experience and really see the vision for, and get their own vision for what better plant design looks like. And so we're excited to work with that on you and helping you evaluate and improve your usage of Plant 3D.
Yeah, as part of that communication and documentation too, we've had a fairly large internal effort to wrap our hands around better metrics, around improvements and actual business outcomes for companies. So the road to better plant design hasn't just been for our clients; it's also been for us. So we've been trying to become a more mature organization around making sure that we've got data that we can fall back on to say, this is the estimated cost of this problem you've brought to us, and here's how much the improvement that we can help you make, or maybe it's just a workflow, or maybe it's a tool we provide, or maybe it's just something that we point out to them that they need to do differently. But whatever the case may be, there's typically a cost savings or a profitability improvement that we can show, and we've been getting a lot better at that. So we've got some exciting tools that we're currently developing and using on a daily basis. So hopefully we'll see a little bit of that on our website too, just so some tastes of the tools that you can use to communicate up to your management teams. Just how impactful Plant 3D has been, and I'll leave it at that.
Excellent. Yes. So Caitlin, over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. And everyone out there, thank you so much for attending. We hope that this has been informative for you and very helpful to you and your company. Thank you for joining us on this webinar, and we hope to see you on future webinars. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.